Hi everybody, this is Hero from the Birds back with another Shadowlands video. And in this video, I'd like to take a look at a kind of unique playstyle for Elemental Shaman or Enhanced Shaman, which features them as the healer of a Mythic Plus group. Now I think doing a bunch of testing the last little while, it's likely that Elemental is slightly better at this than Enhancement, but I want to go over the basic idea and talk to you about some of the fun I've been having using this in dungeon groups, and then show you a little bit of the gameplay so that you can get a sense of what it looks like for yourself. Now, the first question obviously is going to be, is this viable? Is this amazing? I don't really think so, but you can probably get away with it on a plus 10 up to maybe a plus 15. And depending on your group, you could probably push a little bit higher depending on who you have with you. But basically, the idea is to leverage as much of the damage portion of either an elemental or enhance, and then build together some tools alongside Chains of Devastation, the legendary that allows your chain heal and chain lightning to bounce back and forth as instant cast. What makes this work for elemental and for enhance is that the chain heal is instant cast and most importantly costs no mana. So as long as you're alternating back and forth between these two, you'll never run which is obviously the reason why these two DPS classes can't serve as a healer in a normal Mythic Plus. They just run out of mana casting healing surges or casting chain heals. So we're going to take this baseline idea that our chain heal is always going to be free cast, and we're going to build together with it some of the other tools that are available in the kit in order to provide the sort of throughput healing necessary in a dungeon setting while also just dominating with lots of AoE damage. So very good and fortified where the boss damage is not going to be so heavy that you can't heal through it, but the mobs allow you to cycle and rotate your CDs. So at the moment, I've been testing on all the covenants, and the one that is probably the strongest is actually Night Fae, but right now I'm just finishing up my testing of Kyrian. And the point of this is really to look for abilities that synergize really well with what your kit provides. But at the moment, I just want to talk about the basic building blocks on the conduit sides, and then I'll move to show you the talent setup that I'm looking at. So regardless of which covenant you take, the main thing you want to be thinking about is, does my covenant's potency contribute a lot to my throughput on the healing and damage side? If yes, so for Venthyr, I think, and Night Fae, the answer is probably yes. Then you want to take that specific one for the Covenant. And if no, you're looking at Embrace of the Earth or Nature's Reach as your alternatives. And these two are actually really, really strong, especially because they shore up what is, generally speaking, the weakness of this build, which is the tank healing required. You get a ton of chain heals out over the course of, a mob pull, and there's lots of tools to help you deal with instant deaths, like Tuft, for example, the trinket, but just steady tank healing coming out from Earth Shield, Embrace of the Earth, excuse me, and Nature's Reach is really, really helpful. So I'm even not running it here because I just switched over to Kyrian to check some things out. Other than that, you might want to make use of the Night Phase Potency Conduit, which is going to reduce the CD on Fey Transfusion, or for Venthyr, the Chain Harvest Crit one, which is going to as well reduce the CD on that ability. Essentially anything that allows us to move towards more frequent use of these big time CDs is desirable. Now, the reason why the Fey Transfusion seems to work really well both for enhancement and for elemental is you get to do a huge burst of damage into a mob pull and then hold for about 20 seconds the CD of your transfusion, get yourself into a nice position and send it out as a huge AoE burst heal. So it's kind of like your Divine Toll type of gameplay. You hold it as an emergency when needed and fire it off. Enhancement, it's a little bit trickier to make use of the overall gameplay, but in general, what you're trying to do is build stacks of Maelstrom weapon in melee, and when you get to 5, you want to fire off your chain heals. Usually, depending on the difficulty of the dungeon, you want to alternate back and forth between either forcing the heavy Maelstrom procs into Chain Lightning, so you have huge bursty Chain Lightnings on packs, or alternatively, doing the same thing with your Chain Heals. So you would basically cast Chain Lightning into a mob so that your Chain Heal is ready to go, build up your Maelstrom stacks, cast your Chain Heal, and then immediately cast Chain Lightning again to have your Chain Heal ready to go for when you build up Maelstrom stacks. In terms of the gameplay, it's a little clunky, though it's somewhat effective if you put it together with one of the conduits. I think I have it here running because I was just testing it. Chill to the core in AoE, essentially allowing you to build from ranged more Maelstrom stacks as you spend them. So this is a good way at higher conduit levels to guarantee that you'll always have Maelstrom stacks ready to go in melee for your enhancement shaman. But I think Ellie is probably the best version of this, and this isn't even necessarily the best talent setup. I've just been playing around with things. More likely you're going to be going with Storm Elemental just for damage throughput of the Storm Elemental itself in Primal Elementalist. Let me walk through the basic strategy that we're going to be employing. So we cast very few lava bursts, so we're not going to make use of Echo of the Elements. Static Discharge's throughput is not very good, and it's also a CD we want to press. But what we're looking to do is game with Echoing Shock our Chain Heals. Echoing Shock is going to allow us to cast our Chain Heal twice in a row, and this is a lot of throughput just in general on your whole group. Earth Shield, in addition to this, always on our tank, is going to make sure that those chain heals are really meaty, and it's just perfect for the Mythic Plus setting because the majority of the damage is going to be taken by your tank. Ancestral Guidance is a nice 2-minute cooldown to pair with all of your stuff, so the beauty of this is it converts all of our damage and our healing into healing. It's just a huge throughput button for us on the healing side, and you can match this up if you need insane amounts of throughput for maybe a Prideful with your Fey Transfusion or Chain Harvest, or you can leave it alone. Essentially allows you to juggle two 2-minute CDs for any pull, so you have a 1-minute CD ready to go. Primal Elementalist obviously is just lots of burst damage for whichever portion of the dungeon you need it for, either big pulls in your mobs or your lusts on bosses, that kind of stuff. And Stormkeeper is going to be buffed by our basic gameplay from the legendary. What that means is that you can start with the chain heal and have your chain lightning devastation ready to go. You can proc echoing shock so that your next button is going to duplicate, and then you can do your Stormkeeper into massive AoE damage from it'll repeat your chain lightning again. Obviously the echoed chain lightning from your Stormkeeper doesn't get the benefits of the bonus damage, but the initial Stormkeeper damage will be buffed by the Chains of Devastation buff Chain Heal provides. So you can go Chain Heal, Stormkeeper Chain Lightning, you can go Chain Heal right again, and another Stormkeeper Chain Lightning, and both of those will get the buff from this instant cast Elemental Overload on every target sort of damage. Really quite nice. In Enhancement, it's also similarly strong, and the 300% damage buff to Chain Lightning means it's even stronger in general, but one of the problems we found with Stormkeeper over something like Sundering is that you're chewing up your Maelstrom procs, so it's a little bit clunky to use Stormkeeper. Still kind of interesting. You could also do Ascendance, but I found in Elemental, Stormkeeper just synergized so well with what we're trying to do. Now let's move into an assessment of the gameplay itself. I'll just play a kind of replay here quickly and show you a little bit of the gameplay. This is just a Mythic Flat to give you a sense of what we're doing. And you can see here to the right of my character, you have the Chains of Devastation as a weak aura showing me which ability is next in terms of its availability. So Chain Heal or your instant cast Chain Lightning. And essentially we just keep our Earth Shield on the tank, and I use a combination of a focus and mouse over macro so that when I don't need to heal another character, I can just freely cast my Chain Heal and it will automatically hit my tank. I should be keeping obviously Earth Shield on him at all times to buff that Chain Heal's value. But generally this is the gameplay of going back and forth, and in AoE we're spending our Maelstrom on Earthquakes, which are quite solid, and in single target we obviously use them on Earth Shock. If we really need a group heal, we save our shock for the chain heal portion so that you get doubled up chain heals back to back. And if you really are trying to push the damage, you do the same thing on the chain lightning side. The beauty of this is we don't often use lava burst and flame shock in heavy AoE settings anyways, because unless we're Necrolord, we don't get the value of moving those things around. So a lot of our gameplay as Elemental in any case is a spamming of Chain Lightning into earthquakes. And if we're using Echo of the Great Sundering, where we throw an earth shock in so that our next one will produce a massive earthquake. Here we just convert them all into earthquakes for AoE, and off we go. But the beauty of it really is that our chain lightnings are always instant cast, no matter what we're doing. It's just a really nice gameplay back and forth of chain heals into chain lightnings. Here you can see I'm using the Kyrian ability, which is the little Vesper totem that goes down. And if I was Night Fae, or when I go back to Night Fae, I would just have used my Night Fae ability there to heal up the group. I used AG on the other one, and similarly, you can do the same thing with the Night Fae one. Both of those are 2 minutes, as I said before, so they're nice little CDs to work with. You'll notice I have Tuft here, my trinket on the right, and that's just our emergency heal button. There's other trinkets that I think pair well with that. Probably the one that tags you for some damage and allows your healing to be bottled up, so that if somebody dips below 30%, they get a little heal. That's a nice little emergency button. You can see there the healing throughput 3.3, 3.4k is very standard without any CDs going out. So the 10k damage, this is without Echoes of the Great Sundering, and what are we in now? We're in about 210 eye level gear, so not too bad in terms of general throughput, and that's the sort of reason why we want to think about this as a general build. Can we do tons and tons of damage and provide the required healing for the throughput moments? And I think the answer, if you had a coordinated group, is yes. One of the disadvantages you're going to find, of course, is that you're missing a dispel. So we can get rid of curses. And here I use the Tuft, and the rogue gets hit again, and you'll see they pop back up. Great use of Tuft there, just to show you what it's like. And you can just manage your group with triage in all of these circumstances. But yeah, obviously you're missing the dispel, which is a big problem. I think in general, if you're going to pair this with a group, you want a Holy Paladin that can bop things off and obviously provide any necessary group topping Word of Glories as needed. So it's a nice little pairing for you there if you're looking for specific groups to work with. You could also just do 2 of these in a dungeon and have Mega and Elemental Shaman throughput, which is really solid for Fortified because of Earthquake's value in knocking down targets. In any case, it's been really fun to test out, and I still have more to do, and I need to come back to this and look at Night Fae, because I spent most of my time in Night Fae testing out Enhancement Shaman, which looked fine, but it looks like Ellie is just significantly better overall, and having that access to that burst healing and burst damage is really quite nice. In any case, guys, I thought I'd just show you a little bit of the gameplay in a basic Mythic dungeon. I'll try to do some higher Mythic keys with it with some of our groups so you can see what the threshold is for throughput. Maybe once I get the Night Fae on the reset, and you can then judge for yourselves whether it's something that you can incorporate. But mostly it's about having fun, and I think here is a good example of a strained moment in our dungeon where the throughput is really tested out. So I'll finish up after I take a look at this little pull here. You can see we Tuft the tank at that moment, pop our AG, and then we just get going with damage. We put our totem down, and the whole group is fine. We're pushing 4.2k HPS, not a problem at all. And then we just chain here our way back to safety. Here, shock can be used alongside our either the damage portion, or I choose to use it on a chain heal. I did it accidentally. I realized that I would have preferred that. But shock will also work on healing surge if you need to pump out a few healing surges. Just remember that we don't really run out of mana when we're doing chain heal, but we will run out of mana if we cast our healing surges. And then on the boss, you can just do your normal rotation. Again, I was running totem, the flame totem, just to check things out. I don't think it's really that good. Probably want storm elemental. And I'll look at the talents here in a second after this dungeon, after this boss is dead, just to show you some of my recommendations for various content. One of the nice things about it is being a kind of triage type of style. You can move all over the place because everything is instant cast outside of your lava burst. You can be literally a body that gets into position so that your chain heal will bounce around and hit your ranged players. So if you need to hit a hunter, you can walk toward him, be halfway in between him and your target, and then your chain heals will hit it. you don't need to be facing your target for chain heal. You do for chain lightning. So essentially, you always want to be facing the mobs that you're firing at, but you can send chain heals behind you to any target that's injured. In any case, that's just a little flavor of the gameplay. As far as talents go, I think Earth and Rage just as passive damage is fine. Echo of the Elements is probably okay, and there's once you get used to it, you can probably squeeze far more lava bursts out, especially in single target. Echoing Shock's value has already been discussed. Elemental Blast is interesting, but I think, and it might be useful, but you do give up some of that instant cast pressure. One of the things that makes it really nice. Echoing Shock just filling the gap between your uses of Ancestral Guidance or Fate Transfusion. Earth Shield is mandatory in this build, as it's going to buff up your chain heals alongside the conduits that I mentioned. And I think because Surge of Power and Ice Fury are not really that viable, Surge of Power having no synergies with Chain Lightning, and Ice Fury introducing at least 4 or 5 extra GCDs for us to press that we don't really want to deal with, Primal Elementals fits really nicely for the kind of burst damage we're looking to offer the group. Unlimited power is interesting, given that we cast so many chain lightnings in a given fight, but I don't know if we actually need the haste, and Stormkeeper has just so much synergy with our group. In any case, as far as gearing goes, again, I was suggesting you want plumage, and you'll likely want a trinket like something else that's helpful, maybe a sun mote, maybe a quantum device, maybe even repose if you're finding you need a little burst of healing for your group. Probably also there's a significant dungeon trinket that I'm forgetting, maybe the one that I had talked about before. Let me just find it here so that it's on our list. There it is, the Siphoning Phylactery Shard. This one is that sort of potentially emergency button. So you press it to sack your health, and then it has like a 30-second CD. Anybody in that time can get healed if they drop below 30%. So I'll test some of this out a little bit later once I grab a copy of it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Just something fun to play around with and see what it's like. Obviously, I'm not suggesting this is viable for heavy key pushing, but one thing it does do, if you can manage to have a good solid group, is it basically gives you an entirely other DPS player, especially on Fortified, with a lot of AoE damage. You can see I was bursting 10, 12k DPS just in general. And that's helpful because Mythic Plus is all about getting through your mob's HP bar before they slaughter you. So having more damage with the kind of burst healing tools is kind of excellent. All right, we'll catch you guys again next time. Thanks for watching.